Hey guys, my name is Miska and welcome to Overwatch Central. So, like most games, the longer you play it, the more flaws you'll discover. No game is perfect and Overwatch definitely has some fundamental gameplay aspects that might have been fine for the launch of the game, but could really use changing now. Just think about how different the game was at launch. There were no hero limits in quick play or competitive. Some heroes had completely different ultimates, and we've had 8 heroes added to the game since release as well. A lot of things have changed, and I don't really feel like the game has kept up with itself, if that makes sense. So here's some things that I feel like would really improve Overwatch and the entire Overwatch experience, make the game a whole lot less frustrating, and would at least make me want to go back and grind Overwatch a lot more, just like I've done previously, but recently taken a break from. Everybody learns Overwatch in different ways, dedicate more time to some heroes than others. This is the thing, everybody loves Overwatch for this reason. It's why most people started playing the game. It's an easy to pick up FPS with non-traditional FPS playstyle characters that allow players to find a hero that works for them. As the game goes on, people will be putting more and more time into certain characters, not all of them at once. When matchmaking then comes into it, it doesn't really respect that mechanical skill that a Reinhardt player has developed compared to a Mercy player, or a Brigitte player, or a Brigitte player to a McCree player. They're all very different, and the game creates this problem where a lot of the time people have to play heroes they really never spent time properly learning, and because Overwatch has so many heroes that play so differently from each other and don't even really share the same base game to some degree, this can sometimes be very difficult. And sure, other times this can be fine if the transition isn't too harsh between characters, but it makes competitive play incredibly inconsistent. Jeff Kaplan recently brought up Rollcue at BlizzCon and talked about how everyone might not be a fan of it, and that making that change can be a big and shocking change, much like going from no limits to hero limits early on. And they are apparently considering it though, but not sure if it's the right way to go yet, not sure if they should really pull the trigger or not. I don't necessarily think that Rollcue is the way to fix all of this. I don't think there is such a thing as just fixing competitive in one simple fix or anything like that, but I would love to see what that would be like, even if it was just a test week on the PTR. Say it was just a very bare bones system that had some limited test times on the PTR to push more players to play at once, just to see what it's like, gather feedback for the devs, etc. At least giving that a try on the PTR seems like a very healthy thing for the game in my opinion, so we can get some first-hand experience with that system to see what it's actually like rather than just speculate about it. Now sure, there are issues with Rollcue. I don't think it should force a sort of 2-2-2 setup necessarily. But if everyone that queues gets to tick a few different heroes that they feel like they can play, the game can at least prevent throwing 5 Reinhardt mains into the same team and having them be paired up with one person that plays hit scan and mostly DPS. Because that's just gonna be an incredibly dysfunctional experience. I'd love to see what Blizzard have thought of in terms of Rollcue, what their take on it is, because it doesn't even have to be that strict. Queuing and having a role in mind could be implemented in a lot of different ways. Here are some examples. First up, there's obviously the very simple, obvious, maybe a bit too primitive way of just selecting tank, damage, or support. And then the queue just builds a 2-2-2 system out of that. That's not too great though, because it limits you to a 2-2-2 system. The other thing you can do is have people be able to select a couple roles or at least a few different heroes that they can play or want to play according to them. And then from that data, the matchmaker puts together teams that at least have a few different options with what they want to and can play. This would probably require a whole lot more tweaking from the matchmaking side of things, since you're kind of leaving it entirely up to the matchmaker, but it would be an option. You could also just change the pick screen to be less of a free-for-all and more of a dynamic picking together type of experience, to pick at least your first initial composition and maybe even show what heroes people have playtime on, so you get an idea of what you want to play and how you play that. Anyway, those are just a couple examples. I don't want to ramble on forever about Rollcue because there's a lot of other things to talk about. So let's move on to my sort of second talking point in the gameplay part of this video at least. And that is about hero countering and how what used to be a pretty nice, nuanced, dynamic game of hero countering has become more of a sort of primitive rock, paper, scissors way of countering different heroes and compositions. And I'm gonna try to keep this fairly short and even cut some of the things I wrote down for this section, because I really want to get to the sort of solution part of this, because that's where the interesting discussion really lies. Anyway, so in Overwatch we have playstyles within heroes and within entire team compositions, but rather than several playstyles being viable at once and allowing teams to swap more effectively between heroes and playstyles to counter an enemy lineup more dynamically, we have, at least for most metas, had these gaps in viability and compositions. Some comps or ways of playing can be okay here and there, but then there's often that one magic formula of heroes that will outperform all of them and just shred whatever it's up against on quite a lot of the maps. And this can make the game feel very frustrating. And you see small variations here and there, but you don't really see loads of variation in playstyle and compositions between all of the different maps and all of the different teams. There will often be quite a lot of patterns, mirror comps, and just repetitive gameplay elements. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Miska, I haven't seen these comps all the time in my games. I haven't seen them in every single ranked game I play, and that's true. The meta or whatever is played differs quite a lot from the different tiers, but not in a healthy way in Overwatch most of the time. Right now, GOATS is dominating sort of higher tiers of play, from ranked all the way up to Overwatch League, and we'll get to that in a bit. But if you look at your average plat game, you can see that Reinhardt, Ana, Moira, and Zarya are the sort of top heroes here, right? Now, imagine yourself being a main tank player in Platinum. Your choices are kind of limited. You can play Orisa, Reinhardt, or Winston, and as you can see, Reinhardt is being played 3 times more than both the other heroes combined right now. It doesn't really matter if exactly GOATS isn't played all the time, but there's still elements there that sort of trickle down and arguably become even worse in Platinum. Anyway, point is, regardless of it being mirror comps or set compositions, we have a lot of these sort of blocks of time where season after season, these sort of same heroes stay on top and are played so much that the game feels very samey. Let's talk about that on higher levels of play as well, competitive scene, tier 3, 2, and 1. We've seen a lot of fairly set meta lineups dominate play, all the way from competitive play and just normal ranked ladder, all the way up to the absolute highest tier of Overwatch esports since the start. A lot of this is because one meta lineup is found, and then you can just run that every single game without any real problems. At least on most maps. You guys have seen how incredibly dominant GOATS has been. So what if you just couldn't run GOATS on a map for some reason? There's a lot of games that have a lot of different ways of kind of solving this problem. The discussion around this aspect of the game has been a little bit split for quite a while. A lot of people have asked for big nerfs, characters just being removed altogether to remove some of these very meta compositions, but there's also been a little bit of discussion here and there about hero bans. Now, it's kind of an almost taboo word in a way, but in a lot of competitive games, there are character or map bans. It's just kind of part of the whole game and the entire competitive system. A hero ban system would, for example, allow each team to ban one hero from being played in that match or series of Overwatch. And in Overwatch, we've not had any sort of ban system before at all. We've not seen what that can really be like, other than some slight map bans here and there in various tournaments. But experiments with hero bans have been happening a bit here and there over time, most recently on streamer and assistant coach Jane's stream, which I definitely recommend you checking out, link below in the description. What hero bans allow you to do is work with the balance of the game to not play against either heroes that are crazy strong at that time, or characters that you're not good at playing against, or the combination of not having to play against a certain composition that's enabled by a specific character. When watching Jane's VOD of this, I felt really interested in the Overwatch devs trying this out too, in some sort of environment at least, be it an option to play a separate matchmaking with that in the arcade or something along those lines, or even just run a test of 2 hero bans per game and Rollcue on the PTR at once, or maybe have 1 week where you're testing Rollcue and then 1 week where you're testing hero bans, then you get feedback for all of it and see how you can kind of revamp the competitive experience in that way. I'm definitely interested here. I would love to see this, and the PTR is there to test things, so let's start using it for that rather than having it be more of a preview of the next patch. It's not a public preview region, it's a public test region. Those are the things that I would love to see, and I hope you were able to kind of appreciate these slight visualizations and examples that I brought up throughout that whole segment. Next up, I'll be talking more about in-game stats and the whole score system discussion. This has been discussed for years, so I thought I'd keep these points brief. There are timestamps in the description if you want to skip. So yeah, let's get started. A lot of stats in Overwatch given to you mid-game can be more frustrating than helpful, and players have been asking for all sorts of stats for ages. The removal of the scoreboard in the Overwatch Alpha was recently brought up once again, and some of you may have seen this Reddit post on r/competitive Overwatch. The title reads that Jeff Kaplan was saying that it really wasn't telling the story of who was doing their job properly, hence why the score screen that existed in Alpha was removed. This is a quote from a GameSpot article in 2016. This is reasonable for sure, however, with the same theory, the medal system should definitely be looked at, as that really isn't doing a good job either at showing you what you or your team are doing wrong. So not only does it just show you how you are doing, But that top 3 comparison of medals is a lot of the time not very useful at all, and mostly distracting, honestly. This medals discussion has been around since the launch of the game, and I just don't feel like medals contribute much to making the game better at all. Say medals were removed entirely from those stats there, and instead they give us, say, a more well-designed post-game stat screen on the main menu. Not in the game still, after that defeat or victory screen, as everybody leaves just after 5 seconds anyway. Sure, there is already a post-game stat screen, but it only shows you your career average stats, which really don't mean much a lot of the time, and also doesn't give a player that wants to improve an idea of what numbers that players above them are hitting and what they should kind of be aiming at least. And once you quit out of the match, like I said, those stats are also just gone forever. Instead, showing an average of how you performed with that hero on that map compared to how other players in your rank are performing with that hero on that map gives you a way better idea of what's going on. This is still not really a good replacement to just personal Overwatch coaching or even just getting advice and tips from better players that are watching your games or whatever, but at least it provides context whilst still focusing on personal performance, which is kind of what the Overwatch devs wanted to do, but in my opinion have failed to do with medals and the current post-game stat screen. Current stats give little context and don't really help you understand what's going on in your match at all. Funnily enough, when I went back to look at what Jeff said about this, about the score screen in particular, and that whole discussion of a scoreboard in the game about 2 years ago, I found this section from a developer update with Jeff talking about the on-fire system. So this is about 3 years ago. So here Jeff says that the on-fire system is supposed to tell you that you are doing well and that everybody else can see that on the scoreboard. You're also supposed to be able to see a person on fire and know that's the person that's the biggest threat on the enemy team, or that's the person on my team who's the biggest contributor. Much like with the score screen though, I can't say if Jeff still stands by this design philosophy, but regardless, it's very poorly executed in my opinion. Take these things for an example. If I, as a main tank, block an enemy Reinhardt ultimate with my shield, that could be game winning, but I don't get any fire at all for that. If a Zarya on my team bubbles me, which allows me to not get stunned by a Brigitte, so I can instead get a big Earth Shatter off on the enemy team, my Zarya gets no fire for that. This just makes 2 out of 2 systems in the game that just aren't doing what they are supposed to do and haven't for quite a long time. You could even argue that they do more harm than good, honestly. All in all, changing the score system around and taking a look at replacing or improving these features at least would be fantastic. I definitely still want a fully fledged scoreboard for at least my own team, so I know what's going on in my own game, so I can help out where needed, realize when I need to switch, and make use of everything else that a scoreboard enables. Okay, so those are the improvements and changes I would like to see be made to the game. I might make a Battle.net post about this at the same time as this video releases, but I'm really mostly making this video to continue the discussion about the game that I've been seeing recently, because personally I think this is the best way to have the Overwatch developers hopefully start looking at bigger changes to the core of the game rather than continue with the same content plan for the game that we've had for the past couple of years. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time, and I'm looking forward to continued discussion about all of this.